Okay. Can anybody hear us and see us well? Because it looks the recording has started, and just to double check that everything is okay. I see the raise hand from Walter Torment. So is everybody
Are
hearing
those
us?
just friendly waves, or
Yeah.
I think they are?
Okay, yeah. So everybody's like is jumping back to the webinar, which is good. Okay, thank you, Das. Thanks, team, for confirming that everything is good. Also, just to double check, can everyone see the actual slides in the presentation? Is everything good, or any problems there? Because for me, all looks fine, but let's double check. Amazing. Thanks, Maxine, for the confirmation, and team as well. Good. Thanks a lot, guys. Like you make me feel very confident that all is going in the right direction. Good. So basically, as I already told, the agenda is to share with you our particular experiences and some vision that we foresee. And after that, we would also be very happy to answer your questions and provide some of the guidance. So feel free to jump in the discussion on the chat, drop the questions, we will collect them and discuss them at the end of the webinar. I think we could actually jumpstart. I see that we have quite a good, decent number of people who have joined, and we are already running to around 5 minutes of the webinar. So my suggestion is to jump in. The only thing that I would like to note is also that we have around 1 hour, maybe a little bit more than 1 hour of planned time. So let's try to be efficient. And if you have any question in mind, please drop it so we could have time to answer it. Yeah, basically, I think we have already had the introduction, so I wouldn't really say it one more time.
Yeah, I think it's enough of seeing my face for everyone. So thanks everyone for joining. As I was saying, special regards to those of you who I know and who's joining anyways, despite knowing me. As Diana was kind enough to introduce myself, I am a CEO with RNDpoint. We work in software development. We are a Asian European-based firm, and we primarily work with fintechs and banks throughout most of the continents. Not the most southern one, but otherwise, I think we work with pretty much every continent. So today, as Diana mentioned, we'll do a brief introduction, an overview of what we think about launching a neobank or a digital wallet. Those terms seem to be used pretty arbitrarily these days. And following a short overview, we'll jump into questions. We'll collect the questions through the chat, and then we'll have those answered in the end. And if you have a question in mind, please feel free to drop those. So as I was saying, enough of my mug. Let's switch to prettier face. So we have Diana here representing Fire. So I'm proud to present Diana to you as an expert consultant. So in all things blockchain, and launching digital wallets, she is the person to talk to. She has really nice experience. I have seen Diana grow over the years into a very mature and professional business development officer, and I'm proud to be working with her. As with me, same with Diana. You can always contact us through LinkedIn, through a QR code that you see on the slide. So Diana will be helping us and moderating the discussion, while I'll be mumbling a few words and trying to sort of go through the murky waters of launching a neobank or a digital bank or a digital wallet. So super briefly about Fire Group. So Fire Group is the company we represent. It's the software development company from Eastern Europe. We worked with more than 250 clients over the years, out of 40 countries. Number of partners have been connected to us over the years. We work through 3 delivery centers, mostly from Eastern Europe, We're about 300 people strong, and as people often say, multi-award-winning company is what we are. So we have been working with a bunch of banks primarily, and fintechs. So some of those names you can see on the slide. Some of them are from the Middle East. Some of them are from Europe. Some of them are from North America. They've been on it for the last 8 years, and therefore, gathered a few logos to showcase. So where I would like to start today is top digital banking trends in 2024. I think any sort of trends discussion in 2024, as followed by the launch of all of those ChatGPT-like solutions, wouldn't be possible without mentioning AI and ML. So what we're seeing in banking and with some of our clients is that AI and ML, which stands for artificial intelligence and machine learning, is something which is going to come up in banking in the coming years. I think we underestimate the impact of innovation in midterm, while we overestimate the impact in short term. So what we're seeing to date is there is a lot of talk about AI and ML, but there isn't much applications that we see in banking specifically, or in finance, at least in core areas. Yet this is something to watch. This is something to be aware of, and this is something to prepare in the coming years. If someone is launching a solution with several years in mind, one has to think about the impact of AI and ML. Another element is something which has been around for a bunch of years, but is likely going to be revitalized again by PSD3 directive in the European Union. And the European Union seems to be one of those players who lead with regulations globally. And countries tend to look up to EU often, or sometimes, in terms of regulating. And with PSD3 and further applications of open banking is something that is to be watched in 2024. The third element is blockchain and cryptocurrencies. So I think most of the people, at least somewhat, watching the cryptocurrencies and blockchain, have seen some of the regulations in the US allowing for easier access to cryptocurrencies and trading with cryptocurrencies, which is a major breakthrough, opening up potentially huge market to both corporate and private individuals in working with cryptocurrencies. I think it's almost becoming universal to talk about cryptocurrencies in 2024 as well. We are hearing it many times, not only because we work with blockchain, but also because this is something people tend to understand less, perhaps, as opposed to traditional banking that have less know-how and understanding of. But again, in those regulations coming from the US in particular are going to open up a huge market, and this market is going to be served by one of the products that are being launched, maybe by someone in this call today. Another element is it isn't necessarily new, but I think it is getting almost second life over the past years, is mobile and digital wallets. So as open banking is unlocking access to finance and making access to accounts much more democratic than it used to be, mobile and digital wallets are becoming a norm, or something that most are looking for or trying to experiment with. So mobile and digital wallets is effectively bridging the gap between your full-fledged banking experience and the technology which could be offered by pretty much anyone, and we're going to talk about it a little later in the presentation. The fifth trend which we see is what's called personalized banking experience, and it's also sort of tied with AI and ML in a way, because many of those offers are going to be driven by not heuristic models, but more ML models, and those special offers, which we are all bored with, getting those emails every day, dozens of emails in our inboxes, hopefully those are going to be much improved and contextualized with the use of ML and artificial intelligence. We're already seeing some great experience in embedded banking, and specifically in the next best offer. Also in our personal experience as a firm, we're seeing a lot of applications of that. So I mentioned in an introduction for AI and ML that core applications or core banking elements aren't likely to get a lot of impact from AI and ML, but those adjacent areas in banking, like customer support or offering the next best product to your customer, definitely going to be impacted by those AI ML enabled personalized banking experiences. So these are the trends to watch. These are the trends that we are anticipating. Some of them might be argued, but that's sort of our perspective from talking to the clients, talking to people all over the world. I think another angle to look at digital banking would be, what are the typical problems some of the fintech startups are facing? And some of the opportunities mentioned on the previous slide were closely tied to regulatory compliance and regulations in general, like open banking and PSD3, access or use of machine learning and artificial intelligence and credit scoring, and many others. So this compliance and more basic compliance with being a licensed entity, being able to offer financial services without having to carry the heavy burden of being a regulated company, having the whole staff and the processes and everything adhering to the regulations rather than building your digital experiences is definitely a watch out or a problem by some of the fintech startups that we're seeing. Another element which is particularly tough these days is definitely funding and capital and access to both or either. With the interest rates where they are, and private equity being as cautious as they are today, it's pretty tough to secure funding and capital for some of the startups in the market. I think key to getting that funding and getting that capital is actually to crack the problem number 3, which is your customer acquisition and retention. And through customer acquisition and retention, creating a sustainable business model for your product and ensuring that your actual business is being run as a business, as opposed to some of the bubbles which have been seen by the markets pre-2022, post-COVID. One of the ways to actually do this is through partnerships and integration. So it could be seen as a problem to find a partner or the partner to help you navigate through regulatory compliance or funding, but it is also, as always, an opportunity as well. Some of the best partnerships that are being made between fintechs or nascent companies and banks actually can help you solve the first 3 problems, as well as the 5th problem. So the trust and credibility for a new company, up and going young startup could benefit a lot from partnership with a bank or a regulated entity. Ensure that your potential customers are not being scared by the fact that you've been established 2 years ago or 1 year ago or 2 months ago, that you have this name which is going to help you with recognition, trust, and credibility. So I think these 5 problems, as always, every problem worth tackling, they're all interconnected, and some of the problems can actually become solutions if approached with the right attitude or the right sort of thinking. And I think one of the ways to solve those problems is to realize that anyone can actually become a fintech. So as long as you have users and some sort of payments, you can pretty much become a fintech. So in my experience, I've launched a neobank based off a marketplace, and the only thing we had, remotely resembling fintech was the fact that we're accepting card payments. That was pretty much it. But by offering a innovative solution to the users of the marketplace, both sellers and buyers, suddenly those users of the marketplace became the users of our financial services. And they started to use our solution for payments and remittances. And suddenly, out of one business of basically selling goods through a marketplace, we had another business, which was a fintech, which was sort of feeding off users from the mother company and basically scaling through that selection of users. When you look at companies who are not necessarily associated with fintechs, like companies like Booking.com, for example, they're all looking to become a fintech. They're all looking to build a wallet. They're all using some sort of infrastructure to help them further benefit of having the number of users that they have. So I think the only sort of roadblock in becoming a fintech, as long as you have users and some sort of payments, is the technical solution, right? So the only thing you need is perhaps a solution from Acquire, maybe, which is going to help you launch a fintech solution pretty quickly. We have seen applications being launched in 8 weeks, so our digital wallet is that ready. All one would need is a bank account, so your basic corporate bank account. No specific licenses required in most geographies, and for your MVP, there are no additional integrations required. Most of those integrations will be embedded into the solutions that we offer to the market. But enough of that. I think the introduction and small advertisement of what we do is perhaps sufficient at this stage. So what we would want to do now is to move into a Q&A session, and these Q&A sessions are going to be fed off the webinar chat, as well as some of the questions that we received before this webinar started. Before we do kick off the Q&A, I would like to mention that first 3 attendees to contact us will get the 60-minute personal consultation from myself, and what's more important, Diana. And we'll be happy to share experiences, brainstorm, and spend the time with you on the topics that interest you. Now, over to you, Diana. I think we'll be ready to do the Q&A.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you a lot, Andrew, for giving the overview of the current problems, as well as, let's say, the ways how to solve them out to some extent, because definitely so here it's very important to understand that each particular case is very different, because it strongly depends on where you're launching your solution, how you're going to operate, what banks are you going to have, or if you're going to have any banks, you might have some kind of I don't know, like the cloud currency provider, right, that is helping you to do PSP kind of licensing, which they are providing as a sub-license, possibly in some cases as well. So the question is always, let's say, there is no universal solution for the compliance or something like that, but we would be happy to answer your questions and to guide you how to make it based on our experience, because we are not the legal company, but we have done this many times, and we would be happy to share the experience and also direct you to the people who know how to do that, because we have a very broad network of trusted partners who could help with getting the correct compliance document, helping with licensing in different parts of the world. And that's why we also have some of the solutions that are already integrated inside of our wallet, for example, in order to make it quicker, because basically they already have everything that is required to do that. And what you need is to, do your homework and start working on the solution, basically. But I already see that the questions appeared from Tom. And the first question is actually about how do we deal with compliance, but I assume it's more about how does the startup deal with compliance and what could be the steps, how to overcome that.
Yeah, I'd hate to start answering the question in a sort of legal way, but it really depends. There are ways to start your wallet business or your mobile banking business or a neo-banking business without actually having a license or having to go through a licensing process, which is super complex and super long, costs a lot of money. So in some geographies, which we have worked in before, like European Union, the UK, some of the countries in the Middle East, and US and Canada, there are providers. They call themselves differently, but effectively what they do, their business is in helping other companies set up what is called a segregated account with them. So the company would be a licensed company, either an electronic money institution or a bank, and they'll be offering a service of segregated accounts to a company which aspires to becoming a fintech. You know, some of those companies would allow for opening accounts for potential users, should or once the compliance with that company's you know, requirements by the regulator would be adhered to. So they'll pretty much tell you that these are the requirements that we have. These are the KYC providers that you need to work with. This is the email procedure. But also here's an API to create accounts. Here's an API to make transfers. Here's an API to manage your users. And we will be happy to, you know, take it offline in terms of specific situations and specific questions which one might have in any particular geography.
I also see that there is a little, let's say, additional note from Tom. So basically, you're right, Tom, we already have a couple of providers with who we have the partnership agreement and who are already integrated into our solutions, which means that you basically receive this integration out of the box. But you're also right that this is, let's say, depending on the locations, on the target market you're planning to reach. For example, we have the providers for Canada and USA market. We have some of our partners who work closely with European market, with MENA region. But particularly to your question, have you ever dealt with West Africa? So we have launched a couple of different projects all over Africa, but speaking frankly, our solution is not that much old to have that much experience in all of the possible regions. So not yet. We haven't launched any solution, but right now we are discovering closely this market because it's also interesting for us, but there are lots of obstacles that we see, and I assume you as the possible person who wants to launch your fintech app there as well, especially with the banks, because there are lots of different countries. But according to the regulation in the Africa and in most actually of the countries, when you want to start for some particular country, you need to have the license or the recognition of the license there if you're holding the funds and you're able to operate with the funds of the users, which is equivalent to the EMI license in Europe. So this is one of the issues. Another issue there is actually the lack of open banking providers that are supporting that market. Andrew, maybe you would like to jump in and, you know, add something to my speech.
No, look, I think you're right. I think we aren't in the magic business. So if there is a provider which already sort of offers those services to the market, like, you know, in major markets we tend to know them because we work with a bunch of them. But if any specific market wouldn't have this model in place, just because the market conditions are different from what we had seen in the EU or other markets, you know, we cannot be sort of reinventing the wheel. And if there is no such service in the market, then, you know, there has to be another way to do this. I'm not sure particularly about West Africa. You know, we had some experience in Nigeria, definitely, but I'm not sure if all of those countries in West Africa will be covered by this type of regulation-like model, if you like.
Yeah, there is also one more thing that I would like to notice that since this is a very big growing market and many countries are developing, there is the very big cash flow, and many fintech businesses, what they want to do, at least this is the tendencies that we foresee on the market, talking with different people from all over the world, they want to actually combine kind of electronic money / cash and have enable people have easier access to electronic money at the same time to be able, let's say, to bring cash, give it to some kind of cash agent or accredited provider, and have the electronic money with which they're able to operate. This is actually also connected with the high level of crime activity, unfortunately, and people want to secure their funds, which is kind of obvious. But this also brings a lot of obstacles for you as a fintech organization or the possible fintech project, because as soon as you start with dealing that kind of money, you have to think about the flow, how to secure that money, how to make sure that all of that, let's say, agents are taking responsibility on themselves for securing that funds, for transferring them to your bank account, and so on. So there are many obstacles and many issues, but I do believe that this market is very promising, and we see that many big corporations are, trying to get a bunch of, let's say, a bit of this market revenue and market shares. So I think the future is definitely there. The question is more how to make it easy to do, let's say, how to make the compliance questions the easiest. And unfortunately, might be not the best word for me, but if you have good connections in African market, you will make it, because the connections and personal network plays there a very big role. So if you want to launch a good business there, try to find local connectors that will help you to overcome that issue, who will know the right people to help you, who will connect you with the correct parties. And this way, it might work. If you're trying to, overcome the system, it will take you much longer. Sorry if it wasn't, like a sweet candy that everybody would like, but this is the reality. And I also would like to share the realistic view on how things are going. I see there are many actually questions, and I do want to thank everyone for dropping those questions, because they all are very interesting. So I would just go one by one and read them out. So I see a question from Simon that would we suggest to use the EMD agent model or just lead generator partner model like Vivid Money set up to Solaris partnership area? Okay, so I assume Solaris.
So
okay, please go on.
Yeah, so on this specific question, I think it depends a little bit on your capabilities and what you're trying to achieve. And each model has its pros and cons. Some of these specific things around Vivid Money have been then struggling a little bit with getting a license, and therefore I don't think they have much choice in the model that they have, and therefore that's the path they took. But as I mentioned, well, now they have more flexibility since they actually acquired a licensed company, and therefore they'll be the ones offering financial services. So the model might change, but I think a lot to answer your question, a lot is going to change. A lot is going to depend on whether your capabilities lie purely with digital marketing or more broadly in the product building, etc. So I think that would be an honest answer to the question that you mentioned. So I think the short answer would be that depends.
We start talking like legal guy. Quite sorry for that.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, but honestly, like we're also here, not to provide something like the answers that everybody would like. We're here to share our experience, and sometimes it's, let's say, it's not always the good experience that we could share, but that's why we're here, and that's why you're here, right? Just to see what is the different angle not only from the perspective of the possible founder, but also from the companies who are boiling in that melting pot every year, every day and every year. And they faced it many, many times. So thank you for, for raising up interesting questions. And I think let's jump to the next one. So I see the next question from Mark about how quickly we could launch and how to decide between building everything from scratch versus white label solution. Let me share my opinion, and I would be happy, Andrew, also for you to jump in and add some more. From my perspective, there is always the choice based on the timeline and budget that you have. Like, if you have time and you are sure that your solution will boom on the market in 1 year or in 1 year and a half, that you need to invest and dedicate to the development of everything from scratch. And in that 1 year, you're sure that the market will be the same and you will gain your market share, please go. But from the standpoint of realistic kind of view, I would suggest you not to reinvent the wheel and take something that is already at least 50% ready or something that is open source if you have that kind of solution, or based on some white label providers, and customize it to your needs, which would make your time to market much quicker. At the same time, it will save you a lot of funds, because the big problem with the projects when you're launching, definitely as the founder, you want it to be the best, perfect. You want to, solve some problem. But the problem is that none of us are actually genius, and the ideas that we have, some people also have them. So this is always the question of time and marketing, right? How you're going to combat for your audience, how you're going to attend it, how you're going to get it, and also the retention of the audience. So the quick answer would be, I would vote for white labeling with the customization, but not software, let's say, not plug in and play when you're totally depending on the third-party provider, because in that case, it might be tricky because there are big dependencies and you might not be, let's say, fully aware of what is particularly going on with your solution. In terms of the timeline to launch, as we mentioned on the slide, it's like up to starting from 8 weeks, basically, depending on the complexity, of course, and the level of the customization. Andrew, what is your opinion? Do you share mine, or maybe you have some other insight?
I would broadly share your opinion. The only thing I would add is, if you're building something new, there's this fail fast approach. And with fail fast approach, one would rather prefer to launch something relatively quickly, test the product hypothesis in the market, and only then try to build a juggernaut similar to Revolut or something of the sorts. So if someone is considering launching a digital solution from scratch in finance, I think it's worth considering white label solutions just to test the product market fit rather quickly, get the working prototype up and running in several weeks, test the marketing funnels, and ensure that your funnels work, your marketing works, there's a product market fit. And maybe then, once a certain number of customers is on board with the solution and you see some traction with users, retention, average revenue per user, at least approaching your acquisition costs, to consider building something from scratch. Just because of this fail fast approach, when you're considering to launch something and test the hypothesis, it's always better to launch quicker, test your hypothesis, and only then consider building something pixel perfect, if you like.
Yeah, I totally agree. The only thing that jumped to my mind while you were talking, Andrew, is that even when you're having this approach, let's say quick failure, but to test the market, please never sacrifice the security stuff, because unfortunately, this is something that many people tend to do later, that they think that if I have limited amount of users. I don't need to have like, you know, very good security system, but this is what would, you know, kill your solution, because unfortunately or fortunately, you could see it on the market that there are lots of phishing activity. There are lots of different kind of hacking activities with, you know, with different banking system, especially in crypto space. But as soon as you failed one time and your money has, you know, gone somewhere, you will never retain the same level of trust. So please, you might have some kind of ugly or minimalistic UI, but do have really strong security behind that, because this is the only thing that could really, you know, this is what is the most important for the users, right? They want to know that their funds are safe. They might have some very simplistic kind of buttons to use, but they want to be sure that their funds are not going anywhere. So maybe the obvious stuff, but this is very important to note that this is one of the things that we try to concentrate on, because what we gained from experience of working with different banks and different compliance regulations and the other stuff is that there is no more important thing when you're working with any kind of funds, either traditional finance or we're talking about cryptocurrencies, than the security and securing your assets and making sure that this is not going anywhere and having the decent system of protecting all of that. Yeah, sorry for the long speech. Let's jump to the next question, because I am a big chatterbox and I could talk for hours and hours, but I see that there are lots of questions, so would have to stop myself. And if I talk too much, please do stop me. Let's go to the next question from Andrew, actually. How do we bridge fintechs and rigid open banking?
I'm not entirely sure if I understand the question, because what open banking is basically a infrastructure to get access to financial data, financial information, financial accounts for of a specific person or a customer for entities which don't necessarily issue bank accounts, but in a specific business of getting access to these bank accounts. So the way to bridge banks and fintechs through open banking is an API. So basically, a fintech might work through one of the open banking solutions, like Plaid in the US, or you know, TrueLayer in EU, or something similar, either built through an API or through scraping. And by using the multiple integrations, thousands of integrations really, which the Plaid's and TrueLayers of this world have done with the banks, could get access to the information on the banking accounts, the transactions and the like, upon person's consent. So this has seen some applications in scoring specifically. In particular, some of the neobanks are looking to, or some of the new lenders are looking at, in the UK specifically, are looking at a person's betting history. So how much a person would bet in any given month, and that tends to have a correlation with how likely the person is to repay the loan. So the more you bet, the less likely you're going to repay the loan. There are many other applications of open banking in European Union specifically. There is a great company to watch called Kavin. So Kavin is building a payments infrastructure, not dissimilar to what MasterCard and Visa have done with cards, but they're doing it with accounts. So effectively, by using their technology and their integrations with merchants, one can pay from an account rather than from a card. This has great impact on merchants because merchants pay significantly lower fees, and for users or laymen like myself, for example, the user experience is exactly the same as paying with a card. Therefore, For me, doesn't matter. I can use my accounts. For merchants, it's a big deal because they save 1 or 2% on card processing fees, and for some of them, that's a chunk of their profit right there. So open banking can unlock a lot of opportunities both in B2C areas as well as B2B areas, depending on the particular needs that we're trying to solve for here.
Yeah, I agree, and I support what Andrew has said. But what I also wanted to say that maybe under the bridge, you mean here the actual, let's say, connectivity with some kind of not one-way data sharing. I mean, like, for example, that when you're getting some kind of bank info and you're dropping something back or something like that, not really sure what you're particularly referring to. But there are also, let's say, cross dependencies between the systems. For example, when you're having your bank pass account and then you need to have some kind of reporting, right, on the users for some kind of central bank or whatsoever. So that kind of bridging, if you're meaning something like that, is also possible, but I'm not really sure the bridge is the good term to apply here. But anyway, thank you for the question. If we didn't answer it, please clarify it and try to rephrase it. We would be happy to, answer if you could guide us and give us a little hint in terms of what you particularly were referring to. Meanwhile, let's jump to the next question. So I see the question is about what additional service providers are required to help launch the digital banking solutions.
I mean, I'm going to be a pain in the backside and say again, that depends. Usually, if you're working off your own license, you can pretty much choose the vendors you work with. Anything from KYC to card processing to, your email solution, you can build it yourself and sort of go through the motions of approving that with the central bank. But in most cases that we have seen, you'll be restricted to the vendors which your partner or licensed entity would be offering. So let's say you're working with someone like Solaris, they're going to tell you these are the 3 to 5 vendors you can choose from for KYC, and this is the process to follow. Usually this is being dictated on their end. That's as related to regulated activities. If we're talking about something less regulated, like communicating with your users or sending emails or push notifications, that could be pretty much anything. Pretty much any sort of vendor can be selected for that particular matter. I would say the top 5 to choose from. Again, this depends a little bit on what type of product you're trying to launch, but there'll be your KYC solution, there'll be your cards, there'll be your accounts, there'll be your AML, and perhaps user support, another important element.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also want to say that again, the favorite word of today's, let's say, webinar, it really depends on what you want to have. So it depends. Let's say if you want to have, I don't know, Zendesk integration with ticketing support, you need Zendesk. If you want to have some kind of CRM system, you need that. So it's still depending on what end solution you want to have. But I would say that the main providers without which you will be limited in the functionality is definitely KYC, KYB, AML, because you would have to make sure that all of the people are verified and the transactions are running, let's say, legit, like legally okay. You would need card issuer if you're planning to operate with electronic or physical cards. And you would definitely need the open banking API or the bank partner, right, who will be holding your BAS or master or omnibus account, whatever you call it, and would be your main source, or let's say, would be your vault, basically, with all of the funds. But this question actually leads to the next question when we were talking about different providers and license question. The question from Mark is there a possibility to launch the solution without the license? And the answer is yes and no, because from one, like honestly, from one extent, you can get the license from your partners, and it could help you not to have your own license. But definitely there are some limitations depending on how you are planning to operate with funds. So, for example, in European Union, if let's say you want to run the neobank or digital bank, when you are able as the let's say entity, when you're able to operate with the funds of your users, you are not allowed to do that without EMI license, without electronic money license. But for example, if we're talking about direct payments from one peer to another peer, like from one account to another account, in this way, there is the PSP license, right, which the provider is able to extend on you as well. So it depends on how you're planning to operate, actually. Andrew, would you add anything here?
No, look, I think it's a good summary. I think that's exactly the approach I would suggest. I think there's one interesting question that I wanted to tackle and kind of cherry pick myself out of the webinar chat. It's from Simon again. So it's about pre-built integrations with BOSS providers like Currency Cloud or Swan. And the answer to this is yes. So we do have a few integrations which would cover many countries. So I think there was a recent one. I think it was even public on LinkedIn or something. So we concluded a partnership with Zoom Rails, which is a great fintech startup. Well, not so much a startup. I think they're Series B by now, out of Canada. And with Zoom Rails, we'll be able to offer, pretty much BOSS out of the box in Canada for sure. And I'm convinced that with the speed these guys are moving, the same is gonna happen in the US. And there are a few players. We are in the process of integration in EU specifically. But if you want to talk about this further, happy to connect and happy to have a chat with you again offline.
So since you started talking about the bus, right, and like mentioned the Zoom Rails, I think that would be kind of that's illogical if you also answer the question about what is the difference between banking as a service and white label solution. Would you like to answer that one?
Sure. So banking as a service is pretty much a type of fintech which would help you get covered on all things regulatory, and the main service they'll be offering to you as someone building a product would be an API effectively. So that's your headless sort of banking system, which usually, or depending on the type of boss you're dealing with, is going to offer you accounts, cards, transfers, and whatnot. Whereas a white label solution is a bridge, if you like, from that BOSS solution, banking as a service solution, to an application and an application itself. So what we have is this white label solution with a mobile app and a middleware and integration layer with multiple BOSS and many other players as well. And effectively having integrated a BOSS to our white label solution, we have you covered. And that's why we mentioned in one of our previous slides that the only thing you'll need is a corporate bank account with, pretty much any bank. Because as long as that's covered with white label solution and an integrated BOSS, you can launch a mobile wallet rather quickly.
Yeah, I totally support it. And I think there is a big confuse when people think about what BOSS should do, because unfortunately, many people don't really dive deep into that and they don't understand what particularly API means. So it doesn't really mean that you're going to get any kind of pod, right, or whatever that you're going to run on your end. It's simply the, let's say, they enable you to operate with the bank. This is very important because they would like, this is something which is very complex, and you have to have particular level of compliance and particular, let's say, understanding of the area and all of that kind of stuff. You need to have licensing and many more to become a boss, as well as particular, let's say, legal approval to do that and provide that kind of services, and running in circles with different accreditations and all of that kind of stuff. But basically, they do not provide you any solution that you could launch and drive. You would either need to build it from scratch or search for the white label that would be able to be connected to it. So that's why you also have to differentiate BaaS providers and white label providers, because these are two different, let's say, business models and two different levels of engagement, as well as different licensing and many more. So basically, you could think about them as, like friends that are coming together. They might be from different parties, but they would still have to work together. But you can't really launch it. You can't really launch a fintech without the BaaS provider. Or I don't know, if you are a bank or you have a bank and you could use that, that would be kind of cool. But in most cases, none of us is a bank. So let's be realistic. Unfortunately, I mean, I would like to have my
Look,
own bank.
I wouldn't go as far. It's a royal kind of pain in the backside. There are too many things to worry about, and if you get things wrong, you can, your life can become very painful very quickly. So
Yeah,
abstain
let's not.
from owning a bank if you can.
Yeah, I also wanted to say that let's not forget about all the legal suits and the stuff that would happen if you fail with
Yep.
that, 'cause this is the worst part. Okay, so we covered, you already covered the question from Simon with BaaS. Good, got it. Thank you. And I see the question that is close to what we were talking about, actually, in different integrated services. How do we enable card issuing for our clients?
Again, we are a technical solution provider, and the way we enable card issuing for clients is through several card issuing providers, which are happy to work with nascent fintechs, and usually those card issuing vendors or providers, they'll be offering their services in a particular geography like European Union or the UK, or something similar, and that's how we enable the card issuing for our clients.
Yeah, so basically, if we're talking more, let's say, on the operational matter, it works the following way. We provide our clients the list of providers with who we are integrated, and they, like, if they like them, the jurisdiction matches and all of the, let's say, points match to what you want, we would be happy to contact you, and after that you would need to sign the agreement with this provider. But at the same time, we also have the list of partnerships among the network, for example, with who we are not integrated initially, and that does not include it inside of the box solution into the license. But there is still an option. We have the partnership agreement with those companies, and if you like them more, we would be happy to make this integration for you as the part of a customization scope, actually. So the same, for example, if you have particular provider for your market and we have never worked with this provider, it also works this way. We have long-lasting experience of integrating different solutions, different banks, fintech systems, and many more. So there is no issue to integrate any solution. This is always the matter of what you want and how to make it work. For us, it doesn't matter. Like, if you want to have ours, good, quicker. If you want to have yours, good, it would take extra time. We would tell you how long. This is the only difference. Yeah, and talking about, actually, Andrew, did you want to say anything? Because or not?
No, look, I think you covered it pretty well.
Okay.
I think next time you will meet me in this type of seminars.
I do need you. I need a good company.
look elsewhere then.
Good. I see the one more question in the chat from John about what are the enablers to launch the digital bank? Is it the product manager or the owner? What are like licenses, provider, contracts, and the list of feature and audience? Too many parts in one. And maybe let's start with the first. Like, who is the main enabler to launch the digital bank? Is it the product manager or the owner? What are your thoughts, Andrew?
No, I think the key enabler is a good idea. So you ought to start with a good idea and try to figure out how are you different with many other players in the market. You know, this sort of question cannot be answered with a product manager or a project manager or any sort of other hire. That will have to come from the founder specifically, and the person in charge. You have to define yourself. How are you different, and why people should be using your services? And once this is defined, I think the licenses and contracts and features and audiences, everything is going to follow once the idea is there and the product market fit is confirmed. All the rest is pretty much secondary to the very idea which are launching with.
I totally agree, but there is, let's say, one thing that I would like to point your attention to. When you're thinking about the solution, and I understand that you're referring, like your reference might be something like Revolut or like some other big bank, I don't know, Wise whatsoever, but you also have to always think about how many years that particular app has been under the development and how many funds they have invested, because from time to time, we get the request from people who want to launch the Revolut-like application in 2 months, having the same functionality, which is impossible. And nevertheless, how good your provider or white label service or software as a service, like even the best provider is not a Revolut. You have to understand that people want, let's say, if some product is making a lot of money on their particular product, they won't sell it to anyone in most cases, or the license would cost you pretty good funds for them to earn on them. So be realistic in terms of what particularly you want to have at an initial launch for the digital bank. Think about the killer features that will be simple, but at the same time, they will differentiate you from the other products on the market. Try to, let's say, minimize the level of possible discrepancies with licensing and searching for a good provider who would support you and who would be able to provide you the good list of features from the open banking side, right? So you would be able to provide the decent list of functionality for your users with the minimum input in terms of, let's say, different problem solving on different levels. So try to minimize everything from the, like try not to make yourself problems. Search for the easiest way, in the software programming, it's called Happy Pass. Search for Happy Pass and try to make it go.
Yeah, definitely look for the happy path. I think we only have time for one more question, and I think it was dropped in multiple places, so we better answer it. Diana, do you want to take this one? What is the cost of your white label solution if Ballpark is good enough? Thanks.
Yeah, I could take it. It's all good. Thank you, Shahara. Not really sure. Sorry, not really sure how to pronounce. Hope I made it right. Yeah. So in terms of the ballpark figure, the cost from our side is actually formulated from 2 pieces. That's why it's hard for me to give you very much ballpark figure, because we have the cost for the license that is depending also on the components that you're having inside, and the cost for customization if it's needed and depending on what is needed. If we're talking about, let's say, very average project with the license and minimal customization, that would cost you around, let's say, $60,000 to $90,000 with very minimalistic level of changes like, I don't know, 1-2 integration, having additional one bank, gave additional KYC provider, and some minimal changes of the UI UX. But if we're talking about full-fledged customization, I don't know, having particular user flows, having cashbacks, incentivization systems, maybe loan origination, or some other features that we are definitely capable of and we would be happy to develop, this needs particular estimation based on the features that you want to have. So I hope the ballpark figure was like kind of, let's say, answered your question. We also have to understand here that under that ballpark figure, I also mean the deployment, because this is also what takes quite a big chunk of funds. When you need to set up different environments, you have to set up CI/CD pipeline, you have to make sure that the infrastructure is running correctly. So that kind of activities usually is one of the, let's say, it's kind of preparatory work to make sure that everything works. But it's very important to make sure that it's running correctly. Otherwise, someone could compromise your solution, which none of us actually wants. Yeah, hope that,
On that
okay.
positive note, I think we are running out of time, and I think that was the last question from the chat. So first of all, would like to thank everybody for joining, especially those who stayed until the very end. Appreciate that. We'll be happy to continue our discussions with you one-to-one or as a broader group. In case you want to reach out to us, you know where to find us. We'll be happy to have a chat with you offline, and wishing you a lovely rest of your day, I guess.
Yeah, from my end as well. Also, for example, in case if anyone wants to drop the email, I dropped my email here to the chat for a quick reach. So please copy in case if you don't have it yet. But I saw many familiar names and surnames here with who we have been already in contact. So thank you a lot for coming in, because we've been in contact, and I hope we answered most of your questions, but I hope it was also useful for you to hear today about us, what we do, and our vision from the different angle, not only solemnly, let's say, talking about particular use case, but given the broader overview. And I also particularly want to thank everyone for dropping a lot of questions. It was really, really interesting to answer them. And thank you a lot for the participation, because I feared a bit that we won't have many questions to answer, but I'm really happy that my fears didn't make it, let's say, didn't come true. So thank you everyone for that. It was a big pleasure. And I also want to thank you, Andrew, for this nice chat and also answering all of the questions. It was a great company and assistance. And thank you for making this even a loaded one.
Thank you, everyone.
So everyone, take care. Wish you to have a good, whatever part of the day it's there where you're staying, because we're all over the world. And we'll be happy to talk. So you either have our email, or you are able to find us on LinkedIn. So please feel free. We'll be happy to answer your questions. And me and Andrew would be happy to run this 60-minute session, or what was the price, right? Not the price, but the
I guess
special.
it was a 60-minute session.
Yeah, so hope to see you there. Thank you, everyone, and have a great whatever time you have there. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye now. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.